There, we are live. Hello, hello. Welcome to August. Gosh, where is the year gone? Hard to believe.
I know, right? Well, welcome everyone to the Beyond Nutrition Community Podcast. We're your host. I'm Sherri,
I'm Becky.
I'm Sly.
and we are so grateful that you are spending part of your evening, or if you're listening to this tomorrow, or the rest of the week, or any other time, we're so glad. Our mission is simple it's to help you move beyond diets. Confusion and quick fixes towards a healthier, more sustainable relationship with your body, your health, and your life. Here in our community, we believe that true wellness is more than just calories or macros or the number on the scale. It's about understanding how the body was designed to work, learning to support it instead of fight against it, and create habits that are realistic and sustainable. Whether you are on a journey to improve your nutrition, manage your weight, increase your energy, or simply understand your health on a deeper level, this is a space where we learn, grow, and support one another. Tonight, is our monthly coaches round table, and it's a special discussion held on the first Monday of every month, and it's an opportunity for coaches from a variety of backgrounds and specialties and experiences come together and share insights with the health, fitness, nutrition, and wellness topics that are influencing the way we support clients and communities. So tonight's discussion is the wearable revolution. Uh, what your wearable devices know before your medical team. So, whether you wear an Apple Watch, an Aura Ring, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of those tonight. Um, and chances are you're collecting more health data than ever before, right? So, let's go ahead and jump in. So, why, right? Why do you think wearables have changed our health forever?
You want to go, Sly?
No, you go ahead. You're the expert on these ones.
That's because I'm the data nerd, right? So this is
Yeah.
something that
I just
I've
like power bracelets.
this is this is something that I've, been tracking over the years, and I've used different variables. Like right now I've got my Aura ring on, which actually it did die today. It needs recharged, but I do have my Aura ring. I have my Hume band. I've got, all sorts of tracking, right? Um, but if I end up and I look at, the history of me wearing them, and it did have a very important role in what I was doing. But let's go back 20, 30 years, right? Most people only learned about their health during like annual physicals, lab work, um maybe whatever gym they belonged to had some type of fitness measuring, right? The blood pressure checks. I mean, I know Walmart has the little machines, and but normally you would have to go to the doctor's office to end up and have these checked and during like an annual exam. And that's where the doctors, because you don't like going to the doctor, right? Maybe you have white coat syndrome. My husband has that horrible. He goes to the doctor's office, and his blood pressure skyrockets. And so what do they end up and do? They base it off that, and they want to give him a script for it. Um, Same thing with like your blood sugar. Well, they don't bother to ask you, what is your nutrition like? What did you eat? What time did you eat last? What time, that was one of the things, even with my daughter-in-law, with her pregnancy, was they didn't bother to tell her, don't eat before going in for a glucose tolerance test with pregnancy, and or what to eat, right? They just told her to eat a normal breakfast. So of course she ends up and she has her normal breakfast. I want to say it was a granola bar. It might have been a piece of toast or a bagel. I don't remember for sure. But anyway, her blood sugar was elevated. Okay, there's no protein, there's no, the common things that we know to eat, to kind of stabilize that blood sugar. Yes, with pregnancy too. But again, it's all those type of things. And so that's where having the access nowadays to these wearables can provide benefit, because it shows us how our sleep, how is our stress, how is our recovery, what is our activity. Maybe we just simply need to move more to help with the blood sugar, right? Maybe we need to end up and wind down in the evening a little bit better so that we get those deeper sleep. It can tell us things like nutrition through a CGM. That's another wearable, right? So all of these things have progressed over the years. And whether we're traveling, whether it's an illness, whether it's, what type of stress, all of that tells us how it is influencing our body on that larger side of things. So I'm not saying that it replaces any of, Western medicine, allopathic, to not go to the doctor, just because I don't. But, it's one of those cases where it does give us a better understanding, and we are able to pick up that trend. And many times, even like with my thyroid and, my health journey, I was able to pick that up and I was able to adjust it knowing my day, right? So I was able to review it. I was receiving, those ongoing, right, that continuous window of the daily changes, of the daily progress, where if I change something, I could see it reflected in, the results, right? I didn't have to go back and, go to the doctor and get just that single snapshot again. So there is benefit in them, sleep routine. And
Oh, I have a sleep routine. I wish I had more sleep data, but I unfortunately take my wearables off in the middle of the night whenever I try to collect that data. Um, did not work on my ankle either. Uh, just tore it right off. Um, yeah, that was one of unfortunately, it was one of the last things, right? And it wasn't until I was actually coming off all my meds and wake up within a half hour to an hour of the same time every morning also. And I make sure I take a shower every night before I go to bed. I make sure my room is cold. I have my fans on and I have my sleep mask. I would like to be able to tape my mouth or use one of those bands. I think I would do good with that. I think that would help my sleep out a little bit more if I could do the mouth taping, but unfortunately that doesn't stay on either. The mouth tape nor does the
something, go ahead.
oh no, I wish James was here right now.
Well, and that's just it. It's one of those things where sometimes they do have to take, and look at their mental health. They have to look at their sleep, right? But what we've learned over, I would say, even the last decade, is that many people don't actually have a nutrition problem. It's the flip side of that. I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with one-on-one, and we've discussed, okay, what is your recovery like? You're doing great in the gym, your workouts are going great, but what is your recovery? What is the backside of that, right? Because sleep is when the body performs a lot of its important processes, right? And that's where, like with the Aura Ring, I can see my, midpoint of the night. I can see that HRV. I can see my resting heart rate. I can see all of that, right? And so when those are optimized, or when those are, even going in the right direction, right? Again, zoom out. It's not just, on the Aura Ring, anyone that has an Aura Ring, it's not just, okay, did I get a crown today? Right? Because each area, right? The sleep, the readiness, and then the activity, you have the ability to get crowns in each of those. And if your score is high enough, well, it's not just did you get a crown, it's a case of how is it, in comparison with the other metrics, right? And that's where making sure, growth hormone releases, that supports your muscle repair and recovery, your memory, right? Detoxifying that brain. That has to go through the lymphatic system, and all of this, the immune, and all of this is happening at night, right? And so if the tissue isn't repairing, the nervous system isn't repairing, and your sleep is constantly, I can't tell you how many times I've had someone say, well, I only need, 4 hours of sleep. When you are doing that consistently, or it's getting disrupted, there are systems, processes in the body that are affected by that. And people don't associate a poor night's sleep with the increase of hunger the next day. Is your mood dipping in the day? Well, what typically happens? You grab a snack, right? Or you're more hungry, even in the evening time that following day. So that increased hunger has elevated the ghrelin because you're not getting the release, or the docking, if you will, of the leptin. That leptin isn't properly signaling, and it's starting to become impaired. So your body doesn't know that you have energy to use. And so then you get the weight loss resistance, and then you get insulin resistance, right? And that's where a lot of times we end up, we see the reduced insulin sensitivity. So all of this has to do with cortisol, essentially, right? Higher cortisol levels that day, slower recovery from exercise, all of that plays a role. And if you're not tracking, you're not looking at, again, your heart rate, your resting heart rate, your HRV, heart rate variability. Even Oura Ring now does body temperature. It does the respiration rates. It does blood oxygen. So making sure, that you're actually getting oxygen while you're sleeping, right? Your SpO2. But then, yes, it does end up and factor in your sleep timing, duration, latency also, because that's another people will go to bed feeling, wired but tired, and they lay there in bed and it's like right? And they're not falling asleep. All of that plays a role in your sleep score, in your recovery, and your process. So it does make a difference, especially in people that are looking to lose weight.
Have you seen that? There is a meme, or I don't know what it was. Maybe it's just a post where it says, "Sleep is the only thing you have to pretend that you're doing so you can get it done, so you can do it." But here's the thing too: those people that are chasing their muscles, uh, number one, and if you are maybe a pound a month, if you're doing it naturally, you're optimizing if you put 1 pound of muscle on a month.
Mhm.
And then it's even harder if you've been doing it for a long period of time. If somebody that's been doing it for 5, 10 years, they're going to have to even work harder to do that. But they also have to rest.
Yep.
I know James is very up on the resting part. I got
Well,
in
and
trouble.
it's building that resiliency, as part of the body. And if you don't have a resilient nervous system, your body is not going to recover from the workout, from the stress, and all of that efficiently. You're going to end up and struggle, because you're going to constantly be in this fight and flight. So yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, but there are things that we can do, right? We've talked about why to focus on this, but there are things that we can end up and do that are free. They are simple things. We talked about this before we jumped on, and hit record or hit go live, right? It was simply seeing sunrise, getting up, and, within approximately the same time every day, that consistency that you talked about. I'm the same way. Usually, within an hour-ish, depending if my daughter has to work or not, I'm in bed. I'm up within, 30 minutes of, my wake time is like a 30-minute window. All of that ends up and helps build this body that you're after. And that's where, again, the Oura Ring can track your sleep time. It can track your wake time. It can track your midpoint time. So all of this and even irregular sleep patterns affect your recovery. And a lot of people don't realize that, as far as, they just, and Sherri, you for years ended up and got told, well, just get sleep. But, how do you go about that if, a lot of people don't realize that, especially coming from the role that circadian plays.
Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned something too about cortisol, right? So that kind of leads us into the next wearable is CGMs, right? What is your blood sugar trying to tell you? So your glucose levels are influenced by more than just carbs. Sleep quality, stress levels, activity, meal composition, and timing all can affect blood sugar responses. So, should CGMs be used only for diabetes management, or can they serve as a valuable learning tool for anyone interested in optimizing their health and nutrition? So, I can come at this subject as a diabetic, but Becky, I know you have worn them and you're not a diabetic. So, and Sly, have you worn a
I
CGM?
have.
You have.
Yeah.
Good. So you can talk about that too. So, what surprised both of you to answer this the most about the insights people gain from continuous glucose monitors data?
I was well into my journey when I did it. Actually, I ended up getting a prescription from Dr. Boz. I think I paid $50 for a 6 month subscription. I didn't do it for 6 months. I think I did it for 3 months, um, or a little less than that. It was uh, it was actually kind of surprising of like what foods affected me. That you didn't think that would, or ones that you thought I thought that should that didn't. But really, the way that the morning always surprised me the most with wearing it, because at that time I was still getting, and I still may be getting, I don't know, I haven't been using my Keto Mojo either. Um, Getting that morning rise, right? Before I had eaten anything and I was getting up. I thought I'll tell you the only thing I didn't like about it though is it did feel like it was 5 to 10 off on when I took my blood. So, I mean, for me at that moment, I really was looking for those final numbers. So I was kind of sad that it was off that much with them. Um, but I think it's a great tool, and I think everybody should wear one for at least 30 days, for a minimum of 30 days to see what's really going on. I wish some of my friends would wear them.
Yeah, right.
I wish some of my friends would wear these things just so they could see my diabetic friends, my non diabetic friends, my friends that eat trash, just so they could see what they're doing to their bodies and the way that the food and stuff affects it. Because I just don't think we can say it. I can say it, but I just don't think that they can. Uh, they don't, they just don't get it. They're like, well, why are they selling it then? It can't be that bad, can't be that harmful. I'll worry about this when I get older.
Mm-hmm.
I see people all the time that, they disabilities, inflammation, back problems, all these other things. And it's like, just figure out what's going on in your body. That doctor's not going to help you right now.
Yeah. So sometimes it's just getting away from the processed foods, right? And how it
Yeah.
it plays that role. We're not even saying that they have to go like full elimination or go, with any type of a dietary label. but many times it's just getting away from that processed food, box type food, ultra processed foods, all those type of things, because they're like, oh, it doesn't hurt me because I don't get a stomach ache or I don't get bloated, or there's several examples that yes, they do have to do with food, but there are, what is nice is the clients that I've had use them, or even people that I know that have used them, some of the largest glucose elevations that they've seen actually have nothing to do with food. And that comes from, again, going back, sleep plays a role because it reduces that insulin sensitivity. So that following day where they end up and they get a larger glucose response from the same breakfast that they typically would have, all that has changed is they didn't get a good night's sleep, or they stayed up later, right? Then they were, watching a movie, or they were, doing something in the evening, right, that they shouldn't have been doing, and their body's response to that morning breakfast. The other thing, and I know Sherri can speak to this too, but the stress, how stress, and you kind of touched on it too, that morning effect, that dawn effect, how that morning cortisol raises, and then you have the adrenaline signaling and the liver's reducing it, stored glucose into the bloodstream, because many times people are skipping breakfast, right? They're grabbing a coffee, or they're grabbing something, an energy drink, or Lord only knows in the world that we're living in today what they're grabbing first thing. But they end up and they start to see, and they don't understand why the glucose keeps going up, because it's such a fasting world, right? Grab, some tea or some bone broth, or whatever, and it's not going to break your fast, but yet their glucose continues to go up. One of the other sides is I've had people, realize with like infections that start to come on, viruses, not only, like with their Oura ring, where they start to see the difference in, the numbers of it, but they will see that in a CGM, because the body is trying to, protect that energy, right? So it does end up. The other thing for me that has changed with clients, because I'm so big in the hydrogen water side of things, is, or hydration in general for that matter, is dehydration, and how the concentrated glucose levels make and that reading higher. So many people are dehydrated and they're not getting electrolytes, or they're getting electrolytes that maybe have a bunch of sweeteners to them. But I would say that's probably the other thing a lot of my clients have realized with just wearing a CGM. I know you said, wearing it for 30 days, but many times, even if they can get, like the DEXA that, and wear it for a couple weeks, it is even just that is eye-opening. I like the DEXA compared to the Libre, only because you can calibrate it. So many times when a lot of these sensors come out, there's, Stello, there's Lingo. I mean, the list goes on as far as being able to get them over the counter, but there is that margin of error. It's great because you can watch the trend, right? Just like we've talked about any of the other wearables where you're watching a trend, there's that margin of factory error. And so when you're taking that into consideration, and then you end up and you have a rise, yeah, your number's going to end up and be higher, but there's still that point, of error, if you will. So like I said, that would be, a couple of the biggest things I think that I've seen, because I hate people feeling like a pincushion. So, when we're trying to zero in on some of these other areas, I'll utilize some of these tools, and the CGM is one of it. But like I said, I know, Sherri, you have, in regards of the stress side of things.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to preference wearing a CGM as a type 2 diabetic. It's a good tool. You have to have the snapshot way back when I decided to come off of one of the diabetes medicine I was on, well, that required me to put the CGM on. Now, the problem that I had for decades was every time I went to the doctor, it was bad. My A1C got worse, and they always added more medications. So there was a judgment factor to it all, and I fight it to this day. Becky knows it. Coach Sly knows it. I think I went on a rant, 2 years ago with you, Sly, about my numbers are going out of control. All right, so let me back up for a minute. So, yes, there is some differences in the CGM that you wear and the actual poke. Um, I am like you, Sly. I want to see the actual data. And so when I'm looking at a number and it's 30 points higher and I'm freaking out because why is my blood sugar so high right now? And then I poke and it's a whole different, it's 30 points less. So there's a judgment, a fear factor with all of that. If I was wearing my CGM now, we are 35 minutes into our podcast. I can promise you I would have checked my readings probably 15 times, if not more.
Mm.
And I know that doing the podcast increases my blood sugar by a little bit. Stress. So let's talk about stress. I have worn the CGM. I have went to meditation. I went to yoga. I did breath work, all wearing this at different times. And my blood sugar drops. I think the biggest drop I got was like 27 points. So stress plays a huge factor in it, and people don't realize it. What I had to learn to do was I don't wear a CGM all the time because it does increase my stress.
Mm.
Because I'm so fixated on the number. So every so often I will go, all right, for these next 2 weeks, I'm going to wear this. We're just going to look at it. And what happens, Becky, when I do? I obsess, right? So that's kind of not the thing to do, but it's also, you can notice that's how my husband came off of his type 2 diabetes medication, was through his continuous glucose monitor, seeing what foods tracked. He tracked his food intake. He went, oh my goodness, I thought I could have a flour tortilla. I can't. I can have a corn tortilla, and it doesn't. Like, he figured that out. So definitely, and again, and here's what's really sad is most insurance, number one, won't cover it if you're not a type 2 diabetic or a type 1 diabetic. In some cases, they only cover one or the other. So you have to actually have the poke and you have to have the CGM if you're going to actually monitor and get true data with that. So the key takeaway of that is not perfect blood sugar, right? It's just understanding how unique your body is and how it responds so you can stay more focused on those decisions that you're making. So let's transition, and this is going to be a favorite of my two coaches here. Beyond the scale, let's talk about the old Hume data. You both use it.
I use
I'm
it,
just
but
going to
Becky
let
knows what it really does. She gets a better score than me. I don't think she gets her nighttime score.
Uh,
It's
I'm
like playing a
current,
video game.
right. Shoot for the high score, right?
Yeah.
The only time that you end up and you want a high score.
Well, before you start, tell everyone what it is, because some people may not have heard about it.
Okay, so Hume Health. Let me phrase it that way. Hume Health is an app that you can download on your phone. Now it has the wearable device, right? The band that I'm wearing. So it looks, like a Fitbit, if you will. It tracks everything that a Fitbit would. That's what I was pulling up. So it does your steps, it does your sleep, it does your heart rate, HRV, stress, body temperature. Again, a lot of the same things that the Oura Ring does. But Hume also has a scale. Now, obviously, you don't wear the scale, right? But the scale is, all of this goes together into an app, and you get the overall score. And that's what Sly was talking about, is your overall health score. It also gives you your metabolic capacity, your strain, your recovery. It gives you your metabolic age versus biological age. The scale itself does not only the weight, but it goes into everything as far as like body fat percentage, lean mass, all of that, right? Subcutaneous fat, visceral fat, again, a lot. And so when you have, again, this overall picture, right, where you have the lean mass, you have the visceral fat, you have your bone health. Now, the Hume Health is, a lot of people have heard of like a DEXA scan, they've heard of a bod pod, they've heard of an in-body scan, all of that type of thing, right? This is the at-home version of that. So imagine if, two people were weighing, we'll just say 150 pounds, but one person may be more lean, less visceral fat, stronger bones, better hydration, and the other one has, less muscle, higher body fat percentage, right? They're potentially gonna look, if they're just using a standard scale, the same. But again, there's things that can be off or different when you're looking at bettering your health, right? We always talk about being 1% better than what you were yesterday. And so that's where, again, looking at all of these measurements as far as how the body is supporting your health moving forward in strength, balance, recovery, all of that. Makes a difference. And for me, it was also as I was, changing the visceral fat, because I was on a coaching session before we did this podcast, and I was telling them, I've never been large busted, but a lot of my weight was between my lower chest, right, and my thighs, that, midsection, if you will. But a lot of it was that visceral fat. It was that stomach fat. It was that even internal fat, right? If I have the rolls on the outside, right, then what is that doing around the organs? What is it doing around the liver, the pancreas, all of that, right? It's going to increase that insulin resistance. It's going to, increase that level of cardiovascular disease that we're seeing. And yes, the metabolic side. So all of that is playing a significant role in what we're doing. And when I started using the Hume health app, I was able, and that's where, one of the biggest things is that I've done over the last year and a half is really looking at the progress, right? It's not just week to week, but it's the progress that I've made with using these daily numbers and the trends, because I can see, that body fat percentage is decreasing, that lean mass is staying stable for me. And that's why, now I'm at the point where it's like, okay, I need to, work on increasing the muscle and improving some of those other, percentages. And it does give you a score. My scores aren't always great, to Sly's point of using it longer. When it does the report, my, report for me, my health report, that's what it's called. It doesn't always give me, A+ score. And I, traveled this last weekend. So my health score is still saying above average, but it is dropped down to 601 right now. So like I said, it's I'm able to correlate that, right? Okay, my score is no longer 800 plus. My score has dropped down, but I was away from home. I ate foods I normally wouldn't eat, all of that, and how that played a role. It dropped my health score 200 points. Now, imagine doing that all the time.
It would be down into like the 50s or 80s, like mine was when I didn't wear it for I don't know how many months.
Yep.
It said, no, you don't get a health score. And I don't even wear mine at night, and mine's stayed up in the 774s. So they it's just a nice, it is just a nice point of reference, right? And we talked about the Aura Ring too, and they make other. I know my coworker found one that's not as expensive or has the monthly subscription as the Aura Ring does, and Galaxy makes one now too. So there are other options out there, and the InBody, they have a home scale too, but I think it's twice as much as the Hume, so, and with these kinds of things, just because we're talking about spending a lot of money, right? A lot of this costs a lot of money. Almost 90% of anything that we're talking about right now, they have like the afterpay. So it's like reverse layaway.
Yeah.
It's like reverse layaway where like you can pay for something, and I think you can go up to 6 months without having to pay a fee with it and just pay it off every month, or even a year. I think it's very minimal of what that surplus is. So there are things that you want to do. One, you don't have to go out and buy and spend all this money, right? There's other free things that you can do. You can just do the things. But if you really want to track your data and stuff, they do have, you don't have to just go out and spend $1,000 all in one drop with it. So I think that's kind of nice to have with some of these things that you can get now too.
And I know in the show notes we'll end up and we'll put our different links. We do have affiliate discounts. Like I'm putting the Hume link in the chat right now, but and that saves $20 off of it. So I know you or at least Sherri has a code for the touch points too.
Yeah.
So like I said, we can throw any of those links to help you save a little bit of money on some of these devices in the description of the chat.
Somebody just bought some the other day too. I don't even know where they found my code or how they got to it, but they must have seen the link because I haven't posted it in a while. Busy season's coming up. It'll be more post about some touch points for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny. So let's talk about touch points, right? So all three of us have a touch points, and it's a stress management. So stress affects every system in the body, including appetite, cravings, sleep, recovery, blood sugar, the whole gamut, right? Emotional eating. So if you can better manage stress in the moment, would you? So as part of, and that's something I think, I don't know who got it first. Was it you, Sly, that got it first?
I don't know if we found them at the. Well, the reason here's how I found them, or just went looking for them, I should say, was back in 2020. So that's how long I've been using them. I went and did EMDR therapy, but it was during COVID. So we used the hand, I called them hand buzzies, right? So it was the alternative stimulation, but it was for intense therapy. Please do not anybody go out there and try to EMDR yourself, okay? Do not do that, okay? But in my head goes, oh, this is like magic, when I was working with my professional. And then I thought, well, if this works for all this past stuff, why wouldn't work for something that happened today or the present stuff that's going on right then? And so I did a lot of research. There's a lot of things out there, by the way. There's head things, there's things, all the things. This was the touch points was the most economical and something that you can carry around and put it in your pockets. Or I used to put it in each side of my bra if I didn't have pockets or whatever, to use it. And I've used it for sleep. I've used it at work. I've used it panic attacks, um, high stressful situations. I remember I used it right after me and my son had our first kind of real adult argument after we reconnected. And those kinds of things. And I'm on my second set right now. um my first set didn't it wasn't that they quit working completely at all or anything, but they were getting a little run down, and I ended up actually giving them to somebody so that they could use them and try them. Maybe that was just an excuse so I could go get the ones with the other bands on it and stuff. But
So, what we're talking about is a real time stress support. It's a bilateral alternating stimulation. Okay, and they
mm,
buzz, bzz, 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 and you can change the frequency of that. It actually vibrates if you hold it in your hands or in your pockets, or sometimes, Becky, you stick them in your socks, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And you can feel this alternate stimulation happening. And so it improves the focus, it supports sleep, and it promotes a calmer nervous system. Um, I know one of my girlfriends, she was having kind of epileptic type
mm,
problems. And the doctor said, "Oh, you need to go take a nap every day." And we were at our annual cookie bake. And she's like, I'm going to go take a nap. And I went running in there, and I had brought my touch points, and I put them in each of her hand and explained how it worked. And she didn't even last 2 minutes. She turned them off and she was sound asleep. So it's amazing. I know Sly, one time we were texting back and forth, and I'm like, get your touch points out, right? Um, so what do you think critics would say? Is this a placebo? Is there data that actually talks about this? Um, what do you
well,
guys
I
think?
I mean, they use it for EMDR therapy. It's
Hmm.
the same. They're buzzies. It's the same thing, except so you're just getting things stuck out of your fight, flight, or freeze in your brain. Basically, that's what they. I mean, that's oversimplifying the process for therapy, but that's literally what you're doing. So why wouldn't it work in real time, right? Why wouldn't it calm your brain down to go to sleep? Why wouldn't it get you out of a panic attack? Why wouldn't it de-escalate whatever is going on in your brain?
I actually carry mine around with me.
I
They're,
have mine in my work bag. I carry
yep,
them to work every day. I don't carry them everywhere with me, but I do carry them to work every day.
yep. Um, yeah, Becky, join
And to,
in here.
to answer your question, yes, there is data. There are studies, and there was a trial done to support these, because I've had people ask me that also, because like I said, I have, them right here with me. Um, there was an observational study done, and there was like a 62 to 65% reduction in emotional stress. And
Mm.
I want to say it was like at least half in just people that had physical distress, kind of like what you're talking about, right? In a 30-second touch point session. So that is pretty crazy when it comes to just that observational study. But there was also a, triple blind randomized, controlled
The, the
trial, blah, blah,
standard.
blah. Yeah. Of people that participants that used, it's called BLAST is what it is, the bilateral um, alternating bilateral alternating tactical stimulation. Um, So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of information out there. It is not a woo-woo. It's not, one of those type of things. And it's one of those that you don't have to, wear it all day long. You don't have to, there's no, like sticking it, onto your body like a CGM. It just helps with regulating that stress. And again, like you said, they travel anywhere, right? So a lot of people, will end up and fly with them. Um, any type of public speaking, like you were saying, I put them in my socks. I put them in, the pant leg of my leggings. They're very discreet because yes, they do end up and have wristbands, or you can even put the cufflinks, but they're pretty small, right? So people don't even realize that you're using them.
Unless you have it on an intense vibrate, they might be able to hear,
True.
and they're just wondering where is that buzzing come from.
Right.
That's true. That's funny. So, do you guys think we're creating a generation of health anxiety? Where is the line between awareness and obsession? How can people use wearable technology as a guide instead of becoming dependent? What do you guys think?
I think that's a loaded question. And I don't know if there's any one answer for it, right? Um, I have found though, well, let's use the scale for instance, right? Um, I have found that exposure therapy has helped with the scale, of like desensitizing and not looking at it like it's defining my whole life by this one number, right? That one day, that one shot in time. So, regularly doing it, it's just a point of data, right? It's just a point of information that goes up and down all the time, right? It's not going to be something consistent. Um, there are going to people like you. Do you still get obsessed with wearing the CGM when you have the numbers, right? But maybe, if you did some therapy work with it, did the CGM and your touch points at the same time. No, just kidding. Don't do that. I think that's very individualized. Some people can do like what I just said, exposure therapy, and they just ended up figuring out it's just a data point. It doesn't define their whole life around it. Other people, especially if you're a recovering addict of any kind, you're going to become obsessed with it. It becomes an obsession, and just trying to overdo it. I don't know, Becky. I
I
think that's
think
a complicated question.
it is a very loaded question, but I think it's also creating a more health focused
I do too.
society. I don't necessarily, yes, there is that, OCD, health anxious crowd out there, but many times it's also looking deeper into that. What is driving that? As in my opinion. But it's also a case where they're starting to trust themselves even a little bit more. They're starting to trust their body. They're starting to question things, right? Not just go with the standard Western norm, information. And for that, I got to end up and really commend people on a job well done, because a lot of times people just end up and, go with status quo. But those that are starting to kind of end up and push back and question really make a difference.
So, what should people do with the data? So, if you have somebody coming to you for the first time and it's like, oh, I should get this and I should get this and I should get this, and what should I do with all this data and blah, blah, blah. What are just a few practical tips that you can give folks that don't go running out and buying everything, right?
Baby steps.
Yeah.
What do you truly what do you truly need, right? Because it can. A lot of even our conferences are getting very overwhelmed, right? we went to KetoCon a couple years ago, and I can't tell you how many devices were um, on the show floor, right? And it can get very overwhelming and it can get pricey, but identify that one habit or identify what your goals are. That's the biggest thing. What are your goals and what are you looking to, achieve, right? What are you going to use that data for? Because it can guide you with your goal setting. It can guide you into healthier habits, but it's going to make a difference what you're truly needing, as far as which device you go for. Because do you need something, maybe like the Hume that tracks a little bit more, or are you at the point where you're in such a heightened, nervous system dysregulation that you need something to, help on that front before we ever layer in anything else? So I would say, that's where a coach comes in handy, because they can end up and they can guide you on what that kind of looks like for you.
I think starting out with just your basic Fitbit, Garmin, or even smartwatch like this. Do you know what my goal is with this? I can't see it. I just make the
Close
heart.
your rings.
I just close my little heart rings, right? I don't even know. I do know my steps right now because I was doing a step challenge. But mainly, I don't know what this whole blue line is. I know I have it set for something, or what the pink one is. Oh, that's my calories thing. There it goes. But I just try to close my rings, and it can be as simple as that in the beginning, right? Don't worry about whether your score is a 850 or 8 on the Hume. Just start out really simple, and then, maybe you don't need a Hume scale right away, but maybe if you're 2 or 3 years in and you need to find that new more data because what you've gotten so far, and that's how I ended up with new stuff. Is I got so far, and what I was working with wasn't giving me the feedback that I needed to advance any further than what I'd gotten. So that's when I knew I needed more intensified device that gave me more information. But just starting out with something simple, and this actually gives you you can do a lot of things on these things anymore. You can do your heart rate, you can do body composition. I don't know how accurate that is, but it does do it. But I think just starting off with something simple and then working your way, unless you're in an emergency situation, if you have extreme medical issues, or you might have to have surgery or something like that, and you need all that big data right away. That would be the only reason I would say that you need to go with the big expensive stuff right away, because you're in an emergency situation.
Yeah, funny you were showing your watch. So I have the Apple Watch, and what was it? 2 years ago, we were putting in our driveway, my husband and and I was digging and using a rake, and I happened to look at my Apple Watch, and it said I had done something like 15 flights of stairs, and I'm like, no, I'm out here using a rake. So it was just funny because it was like, that's interesting. Or the other thing is, I will do the stairs on purpose at work,
Mm-hmm.
and it won't register. It's like, I just,
No.
yeah, it's so funny, huh?
Which we kind of figured out that was because it takes so many stairs before it tracks a flight.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that funny?
So
I mean, talk about data nerds, right? Becky and I were figuring that. I'm like, why didn't that? It's funny. But wearables really are mirrors. They're not magic. They reveal patterns. They do not create change.
Mm.
Your habits are still the most powerful health technology you own. So you don't have to run out and get all these expensive things or any of them that we talked about tonight, or there's a slew of them we didn't even touch on tonight. So any final advice, anything you want to tell the audience before I wrap this up?
I just think if we, like I said, we talked about spending a lot of money tonight, right? On a lot of different things. Go with, you can get, you can go on Sheen and Timu and get a step counter if you really want to. Just, and it has more than step counting on there. And you just get a little basic on what's going on, right? Or if you need something, and also, they have that, it's called there's no more layaway. It's all called afterpay now,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. And there's those options there too. But start off simple and don't overwhelm yourself.
Yep. Some of them are just simply to add noise. But if you're going to actually create that meaningful change and be that 1% better every day, that's what we're looking at. We're not expecting someone to do, a 180 overnight. Um, the little impact, those little steps, those baby steps are what create the long-term health outcomes. So take it slow, take it as you can. You don't need, a lot of it. So, to overwhelm yourself straight out of the gate.
Right. So, thank you everyone for joining us for another Coaches Roundtable here on the Beyond Nutrition Community podcast. We really do hope that tonight's conversation has helped you better understand how wearable technology, from sleep trackers to the CGMs to the touch points, everything we kind of talked about, Hume, can provide meaningful insights right into your health when you use it wisely. So remember, and this is for me, uh, the goal is not to become obsessed with the data. The goal is to use the information to make better decisions, build healthier habits, and create sustainable change. So, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. If you found this conversation valuable, take a moment to like and subscribe, share this podcast with someone who would benefit from hearing it. Um, Definitely comment. We do read all the comments. We would love to hear how your wearables and how you use them. And if you're ready to go deeper than this podcast, we also invite you to join the BNC community. So inside our community, you'll find ongoing education tools, resources, accountability, and the support of us three coaches in there. So we can help you apply what you're learning in your own health journey, because knowledge is powerful and transformation happens when you have guidance and support and a community to put into that knowledge right into an action. So you don't have to do this alone. So with that, guess what's happening next week? Becky, do you know what's happening next week on our podcast? What day is that? Is that the
Yeah, this
10th?
is it. Don't
10th?
ask me.
Oh,
Don't ask me the day. I just know what the topic is
The
because it's
10th.
one of my favorite topics.
yeah.
It is the 10th. Uh, it is our second part of our conversation because it's my favorite topic where Sherry winds me up and sets me loose and away I go. So don't miss us next week for part 2 of our discussion: why night owls struggle more with weight loss, the circadian rhythm connection, where we're going to help you to build insights into the strategies and practical foundations to support and help you work with your body's natural rhythms to support that health, energy, and longevity that you are looking for in your weight loss journey. So I'm excited.
Like I said, I wind her up and let her go, and I knew that topic. I didn't know the topic was going to be a two-parter, but when we were like winding down for the hour and we weren't even halfway through, it was like we're having a part 2. So yeah. But until then, everyone, do remember we do go live every Monday evening at 7 p.m. Central Time. For those of you listening on to like iHeartRadio and Apple Podcasts and Spotify and other podcast platforms, the new episodes are uploaded every Tuesday morning. So until then, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, you don't have to navigate your health journey alone. And we will see you next week. So good night, and thank you, ladies.
Awesome.